Hi everyone, my name is Justin Haney. This is EDL 850, Module 1, Personal Info, and 3 levels of government control of public education. Before I get started, I need to apologize. I know my microphone's going to have issues as I go through slides. I've looked at several different things to try to figure out what's going on. I've taken it to IT. Their best answer is, hey, we're getting new computers next year, just wait until then. And I know it's frustrating, so I apologize in advance. A little bit about me. I grew up in Hoisington, Kansas, played football at Sterling College. I taught middle school PE in Dodge City for 2 years, and then this is my 8th year teaching middle school PE in Hayes. I've taught driver's ed for the last 6 summers. I coach football, boys and girls wrestling, and track all at the middle school level. I'm a big time Chiefs fan. I love the outdoors. Usually find me walking my dog Boyer there. You see in pictures at the lake during the summer a lot. I picked up Uber driving and door dashing, which aren't bad little summertime gigs for a teacher. My school is Hayes Middle School. We have an attendance of about 750. Grades are 6 through 8. Average class size is 25. Low socioeconomic percentage of 39%. Our community of Hayes really like the community. Wouldn't rather be anywhere else in the world. Very safe, very white collar, well educated. Our top 3 employers are Hayes Med, Fort Hays State, and USD 489. Public schools are ran, regulated, and funded by federal, state, and local government. Therefore, we must abide by the rules and laws put in place. Local government support for public schools. At the local government level, the elected school board is the entity that has the responsibility to help schools operate. Support. About half of public schools fundings is provided by local government. That money comes from tax collection. Each community has different rates and variables that affect this amount. I know in Hayes, everybody always complains if our property taxes go up, but we need those to help fund public schools. Their responsibilities include curriculum implementation, personnel hiring, budgeting, and facility development and decision making. At the state level, their support for public education funds about half, just a little bit under of what it takes to run our schools. That money comes from sales tax, income tax, state lotteries. Each community has, or each state has different rates, variables that kind of reflect that amount. The state's main responsibility for education is to oversee and hold school districts accountable for state education law, which again, each state has a little bit different. State governments give accreditation based on benchmarks for Common Core standards, reading, and math. Our federal government support for public schools. The federal government's role in education is limited due to the 10th Amendment, which gives powers to each state to govern education. Their main goal is to promote and improve our educational system for all students. I emphasize for all students there because as we go through and look at the laws that the federal government has implied, it should be fair for all students, whether no matter race, background, socioeconomic level, religion. It should be fair and free public education for all people. Around 8% of the funding for public schools is provided by the federal government. Those come from our taxes also. In order to receive these fundings, schools must follow regulations laid out in the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. The federal government's role is to ensure that all K through 12 have access to free and high quality education by providing support to states and school districts. Components of the local control. So who's involved in our local education control? First, there's the school board, which is elected, and they are volunteered, which means they receive no funding for their responsibilities, which are to be in charge of policies, budget, resources, superintendent hiring, acceptance of the bargaining agreements, hiring approval, hearing input from the community and school administration. Also part of kind of our local control is going to be our superintendents, which are in charge of our public schools. They are hired by the school board and they are a paid position. Their responsibilities, they're in charge of implementing school board's vision and mission, makes decisions for the everyday programs, staff, and facilities, hires and manages central office staff, assistant superintendents, and principals. Components of the state control. Who's involved in state education? You have the State Board of Education. These are also elected positions and also volunteer. I have my co-PE teacher. Her brother was just hired by the state to be the financial coordinator through the state of Kansas for public education. And we had to do a little research because I couldn't find online whether our school board or the state board of education received any fundings or if they were all just volunteer based. They do receive stipends for meal replacement, travel costs, room and board, etc. for attending meetings, conferences. Their responsibilities are to set state standards, accreditation, administer educational law, control of school for the blind and the deaf, and then hiring of the commissioner of education, which is also part of our state control. This is a hired position, as I said, and it is paid. His or her responsibilities include implements the board's goals and objectives as he or she leads the Department of Education, oversees day-to-day administration tasks. Components of federal control. So who's involved in the federal control? You have the Secretary of Education, which is appointed by the President of the United States and paid. Their responsibilities increase national awareness and the challenges facing educational and solutions to help combat these challenges. One thing that I picked up through all the reading was through the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This person is a paid and appointed position. Their main responsibility is to implement federal workplace discrimination laws that give everybody an equal opportunity to succeed in life and through jobs through non-discriminatory hiring process. Also not included on here, there comes parts of the Congress, the House, and the Senate which vote and kind of help create the federal laws, which then have the trickle-down effect that we see at the state and local level. Where does the power fall? Ultimately, most of the ruling power in education comes from the state level. We must still follow national guidelines to receive grants and federal funding. The state level is in charge of school accreditations, which make sure we get our funds if we're accredited, and the state testing, data collection. They set standards for subject and level, and then they set staff evaluations for all Kansas employees who are educators and principals. What level of government has the most influence according to each one of our standards? So standard 6.1, evaluate, develop, implement management, communication, technology, school level governance, and operation systems that support each student's learning needs and promotion, vision of the school. I definitely thought this is the local portion of the government where, you know, your school board is in charge of a lot of these things, just making sure that each school in the district is taking care of those responsibilities. 6.2, evaluate, develop, and advocate for data-informed, equitable resourcing plan and support school improvement and student development. I definitely thought this was the state's responsibility as they have most of the control, most of the control to develop and advocate through, you know, state testing. They look at the data and see where school districts need to improve and go from there. 6.3, reflectively evaluate, communicate, and implement laws, rights, policies, regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. At first, I kind of was leaning a little bit that the state did a lot of this too, which I think is definitely part of it, but ultimately settled on federal just in the fact that it was promoting student adult success and well-being. I think that's really the federal government's main portion of public education, is that everybody has that right to a free and a high quality education. How do all three levels function together to support the success and well-being of each student and adult? Each level serves its own purpose. We often see the trickle-down effects. Decisions made at the federal level force the state to change policies, laws, standards in order to meet federal requirements to receive funds. At the local level, we need to make adjustments in district and school policies to curriculum in order to meet these regulations. These decisions across all three levels are in place to keep the playing field fair and balanced in order to give every student and adult equal opportunity to be successful. Looking at the correlation, relevance, and reflection portion, as we do on every module, I really thought this module aligned with all three course learning outcomes. It showed us how the three level of government serve its own purpose and how they kind of mesh and tie together. The relevance portion of this module is very relevant and definitely in the current learning. As a future administrator, it's going to be vital that I familiarize myself with all three levels of government and how they each serve their own purpose and work together and will impact our buildings and schools. For me, a little bit of it is kind of unfamiliar, just in the fact that at a physical education level, we don't have to deal with the standards and state testing nearly as much. So I'm kind of often out of the loop. I need to do a better job in my own school of making sure that I'm kind of informed and can kind of get part of those decisions, not decision making, but at least get the information that's coming out that's relevant and stays up to date. If I want to continue to pursue to be an administrator, that's definitely going to be a big part of it. My references here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I can get my microphone fixed and figured out before the next presentation that I have to record. So thank you for watching, and good luck to everyone as we go forward in this semester.